1963, Bob Dylan went down to Mississippi to support the SCLC's voter registration drive. Anybody know that? A time when it was not safe for white activists in Tallahatchie County, but the murder of Medgar Evers a month before had so disturbed Dylan, he left Greenwich Village for Greenwood, Mississippi, along with Pete Seeger and Theodore Bickel, to entertain and maybe provide a bit of cover for SCLC workers. Evers had been gunned down in his own driveway in Jackson, a murder that so stunned the country it even got to me, a self-centered teen kid in Atlanta who was more concerned with my acne and the unobtainable Jewish girls at Grady High School. And within a week of the killing, Dylan had written a song not only about the murder, but also a full-on etiology of white supremacy, how it ticks, how it trickles down to people like my father. And after Seeger heard him sing the song out in that field in Greenwood, Mississippi, he pulled some strings for Dylan to perform it a month later on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, just 1 hour before Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech. The MC, not exactly sure what to do with this scruffy 22-year-old with a guitar, so he just said, "And now, Bob Dylan, a folk singer from New York City." And with that, the kid walked up to the famous mic and he said, "A bullet from the back of a bush took Medgar Evers' blood. A finger fired the trigger to his name. A handle hit out in the dark. A hand set the spark. 2 eyes took the aim behind a man's brain. But he can't be blamed. He's only a pawn in their game." And this had to be almost shocking to that great crowd, right? He was giving something of a pass to Medgar Evers' killer. And that summer of 1963 had been one of terrible supper times at my house. My father, often drunk, slamming his fist on the table whenever the subject of civil rights came up, a subject on everybody's mind that summer. Plus, the local White Citizen Council representative, a television repairman named Dean Griggs, often dropped by the house whether our TV was broken or not, to deliver Cobb County's white supremacist newspaper, The Thunderbolt. And this was how the white anger system worked. Lieutenants going around rallying the white troops, same as Fox News does today. It was keeping my father's hatreds and fears at a high boil. The White Citizens Council in Virginia Highland, the same organization that Medgar Evers' killer, Byron Dua Beckwith, belonged to in Jackson. A South politician, he preaches to the poor white man. You got more than the blacks, don't complain. You're better than them. You've been born with white skin to explain. And the Negro's name is used as plain for the politician's gain as he rises to fame, and the poor white remains on the caboose of the train. But it ain't him to blame. He's only a pawn in their game. And now, more than 60 years later, not much has changed. Politicians, and not just Southern ones anymore, are moving the same pawns, appealing to the same worst instincts in those Americans who, like my father, like the current Supreme Court, are blinded by anger because after centuries of privilege, thanks to slavery, true equality for others feels like repression to white males and, yes, white women, some white women. And this is truly a human disorder, a DSM-4 type mental illness we still see playing out this summer in those election ads for governor. The deputy sheriffs, the soldiers, the governors get paid. And the marshals and cops get the same. But the poor white man's used in the hands of them all like a tool. He's taught in his school from the start by the rule that the laws are with him to protect his white skin, to keep up his hate, so he never ever thinks straight about the shape that he's in. But it ain't him to blame. He's only a pawn in their game. To keep up his hate so he never thinks straight about the shape that he's in. There it is. That is what my sister and I were too young to have. Compassion for my father being used like a tool. Thanks for that one, Bob. My father was overshadowed his whole life by my grandfather, who studied radiology in France at Madame Curie's Institute in the early 1920s. And then he came back to the South to zap tumors, save lives, and be an impossible standard for his son, who was my old man, who sank into alcohol, and yes, the love of his white skin. And just as Dylan said, Byron de la Beckwith's white skin was indeed protected. He was indicted twice for the murder of Medgar Evers after bragging about it over a microphone at Klan rallies, and both trials resulting in hung juries because only registered voters could sit on a jury in Mississippi at that time, and mostly only white people could vote. People like my father, who, as we hear in the next verse, were hobbled by one of Dylan's most potent metaphors, the hoofbeats pounding in his brain. From the poverty shacks, he looks from the cracks to the tracks, and the hoofbeats pound in his brain, and he's taught how to walk in a pack, shoot in the back with his fist in a clinch, to hang and to lynch, to hide neath the hood, to kill with no pain, like a dog on a chain. He ain't got no name, but it ain't him to blame. He's only a pawn in their game. And it was a week after being shot, June 12, 1963, Medgar Evers was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery because he was a veteran. He had fought in France against Nazi Germany, same as Hosea Williams had. Medgar Evers' graveside service attended by thousands, as though numbers might in some way make up for the loss of a father and a husband who had worked for the best in this country. And it would take 30 years, but through the tireless work of the Jackson, Mississippi newspaper, enough evidence was gathered to finally convict Byron de la Beckwith of murder. And he lived out his last years in prison, some measure of justice in the end, prevailing as we pray it always must. And this will have to be our only solace as we slog through these so wrong years when appeals to the worst in our country are, for the moment, prevailing. When pampered from birth, white judges can sit on the Supreme Court and rule that the Voting Rights Act of 1964 is no longer needed. Today, Medgar Evers was buried from the bullet he caught. They lowered him down as a king, but when the shadowy sun sets on the one that fired the gun, he'll see by his grave, on the stone that remains, carved next to his name, his epitaph plain. He was only a pawn in their game.